Hello and welcome, listeners and viewers of the Ecosysteming Podcast. I'm your host, Thom Ruhe. And today, I have a guest. Do I have a guest? Not only is she a dear friend and a well known, respected member of our ecosystem, she also represents a part of the ecosystem that I don't think is nearly understood well enough, appreciated well enough. And we're going to definitely go deep on that, but I'm going to let that hang for a minute while I'm doing your intro. So, of course, I'm talking about the superstar Margaret McNab, who is the founder and principal of McNab Company, strategic advisors specializing in communications for the nonprofit economic development and academic sectors. Margaret, did I get that all right?
Yes, you nailed it. You nailed it with a heavy dose of entrepreneurial support organization.
Well, and I was just gonna say, that's your official boilerplate.
Uh-huh.
The friend of Margaret, boilerplate would be, yes, ESOs and so much more.
Mhm.
I always like to say if I'm trying to impress somebody in the ecosystem, I like to say that I'm your friend, or at least that you know me, because I am
Likewise.
proud to say that I know you. And frankly, I've known you since I think, like, we got connected very early in my tenure, so it's been about a decade,
Mhm.
in the ecosystem. And I tell you what, before we dive down to that little cliffhanger I left in the, intro, let's just get a little bit of your biographical background. Like, I've been here a decade. Were
Mhm.
you here? When did you get here?
Yeah, so I've been here for almost 17
Oh,
years. Yes, I've been recently just kinda going back through the memory banks. Things tend to come up, and one of the early memories, was around co-working, 'cause co-working has been on my mind. I've been rolling through lots of different, spaces here, was, years ago, before there was American Underground, before there was, Raleigh Found, before there was a place called Bull City Forward, and I have a video of myself and my partner, co-working there, and it just, like, pans past me, and it's just a
what is
completely empty.
this
Is it
city
complete
called
exactly. It's
co-working?
a completely empty room, and we're like, "But we're co-working here, yes!" So, but yeah, 17 years ago, I was working in the music industry in Portland, Oregon, with independent, musicians, record labels. I was doing it. That's who all my friends were, and, the musicians, the artists really liked having somebody do the talking for them.
That makes sense because you're a duck.
I am, University of Oregon, yeah. I grew up
Uh,
in Missoula, Montana, and I went to University of Oregon and, lived in the state until Portland until I moved out here.
what what brought a smart girl from Missoula, Montana out to Oregon?
So all my family went to University of Oregon.
Got it.
Yeah.
My wife's family, she's one of 4 girls, and all 4 went to Bowling Green State University.
Yeah.
Go Falcons!
Yeah.
A decent enough Mid-American MAC conference, and so that was my high school sweetheart. That's why I went to Bowling Green.
There you
Well, that
go.
and the Air Force gave me a 4-year scholarship to pay for my school.
That's for me from Montana. I was on scholarship, the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program. So when I was in high school and growing up in Montana, I my life's ambition was to leave Montana. And so I accomplished my life goal at 18.
Oh,
It's been gravy ever since. I was like, I didn't really like beyond that, it's it's all been a dream.
you really did leave Montana. As a matter of fact, you left the continental United States and you taught business English in Prague
Yes, to
for a year.
corporate, yeah, to business executives. Gosh, you know the backstory so well. Yeah, that was like some of my first jobs was going to businesses and helping these corporate leaders do prepare for their talks for conferences. Or I had one client. He was like the vice president of British American Tobacco for Central and Eastern Europe. He's a great guy. And his goal was he was apparently funny in Czech, but in English was, just a polite. man,
Yes.
and he was like he just wanted to be more of himself. So we would be like, all right, so your homework is like when you go to people are yucking it up and bring the joke back to me. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. We'll work on some material for you. I was 21 years old,
Right.
22. And it was just fabulous. And that's I think for me, one of the takeaways from that experience is we're all just people. Doesn't matter where you
Yeah.
are in a company. If you have a challenge or a goal or something that you're trying to accomplish, like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. I taught a bunch of radio, whatever, communication guys how to swear. They wanted to be able to swear like real English speakers.
I surprised our producer, Christian here, that I knew a certain phrase that's not polite in Spanish.
Nice.
And I said, "Am I right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And how did you know that word? I said, "My senior year in high school, there were 5, a Puerto Rican family moved into our school district.
Ah,
There were
nice.
5 brothers, and I was president of student council, and like I was in my 3rd year Spanish class, and so the counselor just assigned me the 2 oldest brothers as kind
Ah,
of like
nice.
interpreter. And of course, what do high school kids wanna know? Very first thing they wanna know is like, "Tell me all the words I'm that, Senora Zeppo, our Spanish teacher, is not teaching us."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So I got all of those, out of the way, but, if you ever go back to your
yeah.
music PRing,
Mhm.
Funny and Check would be like a good band name,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's a good one. My son, he combines instead of brunch, he is a big fan of dinner and lunch, of Dunch, and so that's another band name. That's a
good
future
one.
possibility. Yeah, Dunch.
Well, I think we've stalled long enough, kept
Yeah.
the viewer anxious with like, "All right, what were you alluding to at the beginning?" And what I was alluding to is that, Margaret is the founder of the Freelance League of North Carolina. And this is not just some, like, little insignificant 13-person meetup.
Mhm,
Um, you know, we even matter of fact, at NCID, I think we funded some programming early on,
mhm,
or at least a
mhm,
few years ago, around your work with the Freelance League.
mhm,
So let's start, please, just for good
mhm,
housekeeping. What is a freelancer? Just 30 seconds on that. But the big thing I really want to extract from your big beautiful brain for the sake of the listener is like, what are the biggest misconceptions? I remember when you were opening my eyes to this, like I've always known, contractors in my past
mhm,
companies. I would use contractors a lot,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And um, they provided great value, but beyond value, it was like the flexibility.
mhm,
But I don't think, like I said, the general public, I don't think they understand it enough. And I think policymakers certainly don't get it
mhm,
as to like what their contribution margin to the economy is. So
mhm.
sorry, I rambled there, but like first, just what are they? And then like what do we need to know that we don't understand about this important and vital sector of our economy?
Excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, so freelancers, independent workers are self-employed people of one. I like to think of it as the smallest of businesses. I think of myself as a business person, business slash person, right? That's how I move through the world. So there are many it is such a broad category of people. It's almost like entrepreneurs, right? Whoops, I slapped the mic just like I wasn't supposed to. So it's a really broad category that cuts across all industries, all demographics. Um, it is. I feel like I've met an independent. You name it. Um, I think that where freelancers or independent workers fit into the economy is Like, are they workers? Are they, entrepreneurs? Are they? Because these are all the circles that I exist in. Well, they're artists, they're, I've met a librarian, they're scientists, they're also can be all sorts of different things, but people who package up their skills and knowledge and sell it, sell their time for money.
Why might someone choose that route
Mhm,
over a job, a
mhm,
corporate job?
mhm,
I mean, you've dealt with so many people that have chosen this form
mhm,
of working. I would imagine it's not like a one side. It's not all like just,
mm.
oh, I got 2 kids at home and I'm trying to just, make some extra income. Like,
Choice is a really that's an important piece there that, one of the misconceptions I think is that people, fall into independent work or freelance by chance or because they're laid off and then they have to, figure something out. That may be the case, but even if you get laid off, you can still decide whether you're gonna go and pursue the traditional market or if you're going to, try to, be your own business, right? Um, I what I have seen is, people who the traditional workforce doesn't work for them in some sort of way. So that could be a parent or a caregiver or somebody who is like flexibility we talk about a lot, right? But flexibility for what? This is
mhm,
not flexibility for hanging out on the beach, although that is an option,
sure,
right? You can do that, but flexibility enables people to live their lives sometimes in ways that they need to. Not That's not as easy to do in traditional employment. So I would say also some people will hit a point in their career where they can actually make more money if they are, their own business,
I
if
believe
they
that.
go and start consulting. You see a lot of people, there's a trend now in folks who are retiring that they're continuing to work in independent capacity. They're still contributing their knowledge and their experience to the market, which is incredibly important. Um, and this is the way that they're doing it. So kind of in some ways, it's like this entrepreneurial kind of end to careers, which I think is really beautiful. But that could happen at any point. For me, I over several different jumps between traditional work and then independent work and then back and forth. I made some pretty significant jumps in my own income that I don't think would have happened had I, uh, done it by getting promotions and kind of moving my way up the ladder.
Right.
That's not the way that I have developed my career. And it really is a career strategy. I don't ever want anybody to think that I'm saying that independent work or freelance is better than traditional employment or entrepreneurship. I don't believe in that. I think that there's a time for all things and perhaps with independent work or freelancing, it's could be out of necessity. I mean, for me, that was very much the early days. I graduated from college in 2004 into an economy that was like, okay, and then declined pretty suddenly. I thought it was me. Thought it was
Really?
me. Yeah. In 2008, 2009, I, was applying for jobs. And this is before you just hit a button and it just blasted out. So in one year,
Yeah, but the world was in financial collapse. How could you feel that was just you?
I was young,
Yeah, point of order.
and I was, yeah, just trying to figure out. And because I fell into that, to working in music, as everybody was kind of working non-traditionally. But the economy and at that time, working in music, so we went from selling $17 CDs at, Sam Goody to 99-cent tracks on
Right.
iTunes, right? So the business was just, like, changing in crazy ways, And on the same time, on the other side of my work and, PR, all the news and media platforms were going digital. So that side of the pie was shrinking too,
Mhm.
And, but that was a time that was, I mean, it was really devastating, and it just to feel like I wasn't getting ahead. So, moved to North Carolina on a whim with a boyfriend. Gosh, you never get to live that one down, that life decision. It's like,
You're forgiven for one cliche. Come
yeah,
on.
I know, and I'm still
You're
here. So
enough of an original. I can
to
vouch for
leave, I
you.
was too broke to leave. So that's, at least there's it all worked out
Necessity
just
is the mother of invention
yeah.
or
It's like
reinvention as an
let's
individual.
yeah, it's like we're gonna drive across the country, like you say yes to that,
Right.
So, but I got out here, it's 2009, and say I thought this was gonna be the land of opportunity, and turns out there weren't a ton more jobs, and in fact, there was like 2 places to get a drink and 1 place to get coffee, and I was like, "Oh, no. What's going on here?" Um, so I did what I knew, from my time in Portland and said, "Well, there may not be jobs, but there's work. People are not hiring."
That's profound. Let's double click
Yeah,
on that for a second
yeah,
because for so many people, they equate them as the same
yes.
and they're not. And my guests are, we have just such awesome guests on this podcast and they'll throw out a nugget. You threw that off like it was nothing, like it was just an expression that means nothing to you, but that's profound, right? There may not be jobs, but there was work.
Yes, yes,
And boy, is that a true statement.
yes, yeah.
There's always work. And I think it's also a testament to your entrepreneurial mindset,
That's right.
right? Because entrepreneurs see opportunities where other people see deficits or
Mhm.
problems or some inadequacy, right?
Yep.
And that doesn't they don't pivot on that.
Mhm.
You look at that and go, "Oh, I can make money
Yeah,
solving this problem
yeah.
or doing this work."
Exactly,
So,
exactly. I
good for
believe,
you.
yeah, this mission or whoever it is like I want to be a part of that. And I know that there's not a job that's going to appear here. But I can tell that they need help with marketing or so let's
Yeah.
let's talk about what that means and what that looks like. Um yeah, and that's kind of careful what you get good at.
Well, because you'll get sucked into something and lest we mislead the viewer that you've only been this solo warrior, your whole career.
Mhm.
You've got some startup bona fides. I
Mhm.
mean, smashing boxes, a lot of people in the, Raleigh-Durham
Mhm.
marketplace are familiar with them. I don't know if you were an employee, a consultant. We had conversations about this in the past. Nugget,
Yeah, they were a client.
you've been around, some bona fide, successful startups
Mhm.
as
Definitely.
well, and how helping founding teams build and grow and establish baseline values, and to say all the normal PR and Marcom.
Well, and actually, it's so my first full-time job ever and here was with Discover Durham, which is now Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so that's how I segued that experience um, in music and in the cultural sector into a job here. Um, and that was also how I got into the economic development world. And I was like, this is good. Municipal Bureau was, coming from music. It was a big shift for me, but I was like, gosh, I love this work. You get to promote the city. You get to, you know,
And
uh,
boy, there are no bigger promoter of Durham than you.
yeah,
I just have to tell you, like, from day one,
yeah,
if anybody,
all in.
needs to understand Durham, like where to get a good cup of coffee, where the best, like 10 after 10 o'clock at night, maybe the Deepak show is over, where to get a good drink. I mean, this is your person. So, hey, Mayor Leo, if you're watching this, you gotta hit up this person because she is an incredible ambassador for the city.
Well, and now I serve on the Durham Cultural Advisory Board, so I'm kinda back in that
Oh,
mix
good.
of yeah, with arts and culture and helping to figure out what is the vision and part of, what, I see as possible and exciting is bringing all these, the sectors together, but also, um, artists are business people. Understanding how people work is so critical to, yeah, creating some of the policy and, shaping this city in a way that those folks can be successful and stay here. Art is, can it doesn't have to be this standalone idea, right?
Right.
It's like it's best when it is woven into all of the work.
The creative class are, I think, some of the oldest professions in humanity, and
Yes.
thank God we had them because they
Yes.
helped establish the record, right?
Yes.
They
Yes.
painted the portraits, they composed the music, they wrote the songs and the poems
Mhm.
that are the historical record of humanity.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, what a service, right? And that's why it feels weird now. So that was my little homage to the past. And I was talking about bringing it to the present with AI and everything that that entails, and how much enabling of entrepreneurship and freelancing,
Mhm.
right? I had a young man reach out to me just recently, he's a friend of the family, and I spoke to him about a year or so ago, and he's judicially involved. He's working through some troubles, and before we knew what his sentencing was going to be, I just said, "Hey, listen, just I'm sure it'll feel catastrophic for some period of time, and
Mhm.
it's going to be a blow to your psyche, but remember nowadays." If there are companies that won't hire you because you've been judicially involved, put your own shingle out.
Mhm.
Create a company,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
A company that hires a company rarely asks that question,
Yeah.
right? So, and then months go by, and I get a call from him just 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Man, were you right?" And I said, "Oh, catch me up." He said, "I'm on 1 year of house arrest,"
Mhm.
and so I started a company.
Uh-huh.
And using AI, I
Mm.
have built this SaaS platform that are for advanced manufacturers. It's boring stuff, which boring is great.
Yeah.
Boring is profitable.
Yeah.
Like, he's got a company that was willing to let him, for, I'm sure, very low wages, but ostensibly do telemarketing, right? Stuff he can do from the house.
Mhm.
But but interacting with the systems, he saw these gaping inadequacies,
Mhm.
problems with it.
Mhm.
And then he sat down with AI, didn't have to write any of the code himself. He learned all the tools, and now he's got this robust MVP with a first client, the employer he's got, while he's under house arrest,
Yeah, there you go.
right?
Yeah.
And he's hopefully being smart and taking this time where he doesn't have
Yeah.
another option, and he's just building it out
Yeah.
so that when his sentence is over and he can return to the wild,
Mhm.
right? He's not starting
Right.
with some janky little pilot thing, like, he's gonna have a bona fide company.
Very
There's
cool.
nothing preventing him from hiring people at this
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's just the power of it. So let me, keep in this kind of freelance
Mhm.
part. I'm curious your experience because you, again, as the founder of the Freelance League, I know you were kind of the shepherd of this flock, and so people saw you as kinda like their spirit animal to, like, lead. I've heard you give, testimony on, like, what policymakers should, be thinking about,
Mhm.
in encouraging this sector. How many or what percentage or what is the journey path that you think for a lot of these freelancers that say, "I wanna be the one-person company," versus, "This is how I'm starting,"
Mhm.
but then at some point, like, as a freelancer, you can only bill about 2,000 hours a year.
Mhm.
I built a staff aug
Mhm.
company,
Yeah.
right? And if you use employees, it's 1,880 hours, 1,880, and if you use contractors, it's 2,080 hours. assuming normal and not too much overtime. My point
It's
is
pretty
you're selling time. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
2080
yeah,
and 1880. Oh, and I knew all the tax implications for all this
yeah.
and how to calculate cost of goods sold because you're selling time.
Mhm,
So at some point, if you wanna go beyond from an earnings potential,
mhm.
the only way you can do that is start leveraging other people's time in addition to your own.
Yes.
So, how often or what did you see that transition that a freelancer gets to a point, a pivot point where they make the conscientious decision like, "I don't want the hassle of that.
Mhm,
I like being in this box,"
mhm.
or, "No, I really wanna see how big I can take this."
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what kind of business they're in. What you see more often with people who, um, kinda reach a turning point where they want to pursue different types of projects or, uh, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will change their business model and, hire full time. What you see is more people, like, grouping up and subcontracting, because other members of the tribe are also the ones who know where the opportunities are, right? So, like, for the traditional market, all the job boards and, all that, there's places you can go and postings and all that. But most, you know, uh, freelance jobs or independent, those where do you see those? You hear
Right.
about them through other people. It's very relationship and referrals driven. So being connected to other people, and actually, so I threw my first freelancers event with a group of friends. Mari Casey, who formed Uncompany, is the one who's still here in the market. We decided, and with Jennifer Gardner, and I'm forgetting I'm supposed to list off everybody's names and stuff. So we threw a holiday party for freelancers. This is in 2012, because we were like, gosh, the one thing that we don't have is our own party. So, um,
Yeah, that's part of corporate culture, right?
that's right, that's right. But it's like, well, that's one of the things that we would like to have in
Yes.
our culture. So we I was working with Motorco Music Hall at the time, and I asked them if I could throw a party at their place, and they said sure. We were opening Parts and Labor, the restaurant, and they said, "Well, this will be like our little test run." And so put the call out. Durham was a very different. There wasn't the same density of people or businesses, or it looked a whole lot different. Um, but 200 people showed up
Wow.
for that event in 2012. You know, and so something about that resonated. A few years later, when I decided, well, I want to do this again, there were two reasons. Well, there were so many reasons. I was a new mom. I wanted to have like a night that was
Yeah,
thing,
no,
whatever.
get it.
But also,
I think I attended one of these holiday parties
oh, no
early
doubt,
in my tenure.
you probably paid for part of it,
Yeah, I
a
think
few of them.
like 2017.
So 2017. So this is, yeah, I was had left Smashing Boxes and was going back out on my own, and I knew that the best and the quickest way to get my business going was to create a room of people where we
Yep.
could all talk about what was going on, that opportunity would start flowing through that room. And I didn't have to tell anybody. Julianne Alexander and I, we created this thing and had so much fun. It was our own little creative, experiment. So we had so much fun with that, and speaking to other people who got it, and they just showed up. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is a place for me."
I remember walking into the bar, it was on Main Street, I forget the name of the
Mhm.
bar it was, and
Yeah,
I was blown away how packed it was.
yeah, yeah. Those when Doug Spate was at AU, and he was, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I remember at those ones too. So we just saw him, but yeah, I mean, it has never there has never been for throwing events for the freelance community, there is never a like, "Oh, man, what if nobody shows up?" It's more like, "Oh, man, what if I don't have a big enough room?"
right.
You know? And everything that I wanted to happen in that room happened. I'd have a conversation with a guy, be like, "Oh, Margaret, I'm having trouble making money, and I got a young kid at home. I got my, and I'm doing my motion graphics business, and the money just isn't adding up." And I was like, "Well, how much you charging?" Says something like, 25 bucks an hour or 17 bucks an hour or something. And I was like, "No, s- absolutely not. That's unacceptable." And look around the room
Right.
because you need to raise your rates, but also you're letting everyone else down
Yeah.
if you're bringing
You bring the average
the
down.
average down for everybody. And he was like, "Oh my god, yeah,
It's learned helplessness. If you don't value the way I've said this to others, if you don't value your work, others won't.
yeah."
And people have this quality price perception
Yeah.
point.
And there is just such value in talking about it and in sharing. So that this guy, the next event that we had, he comes back over to me and he's got some other dude with him, and he's like, "Margaret," he's like, we were just talking about whatever his this other guy's business, and he just told me what he's charging, and I was like, "You have to raise your rates." And I was like, "Yes, yes, yes. It is."
Preach, brother, preach.
And it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening because then once your eyes are open and you feel this responsibility to this community, but also you want everyone else to succeed. There are so many people who do strategic communications and, business advisory stuff, like me, but we all do it differently. We all do it, with different types of clients in mind. We all bring different kinds of strengths, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And you kind of have to have that mindset of, uh, yeah, a competitive mindset is not really helpful because not every client is for you either.
No, and I would oh, trust me, I
Mhm.
can tell you from my own entrepreneur, my startup experiences, some of the best strategic moves I ever made were firing certain clients. And I know you have similar stories because we have shared those stories
Yeah,
over
yeah.
time.
Oh,
So,
you're 22 years, however long I've been in business, like, a lot of things have happened.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've given good homage to the freelancers out there.
Mhm.
I would only say again for the policymakers tuning in, if you want some low hanging fruit
Mm,
that should be bipartisan in support, should be nothing controversial, take a look at this sector. Look in your own district because chances are you have no idea how many independent workers, freelance, contractors, whatever you want title you want to use, there are.
mhm.
Because it really, there's never been a better time in the
That's
history of
true.
the world
Yeah,
than right now
yeah.
to do that, to take that control, that agency, and control
Mhm,
how you exchange, value for what you're capable of bringing to
mhm.
another entity. It doesn't always have to be as an employee for sure.
The most recent statistics I've seen, are that over half of the American workforce participates in the, freelance economy in
I wouldn't
some
be
way, shape.
surprised if that's understated.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing, and this one always gets me is that research is just so important. I wanna know more.
Yeah.
I just wanna know more, but, on the freelancers are everywhere, rural communities. I'm from Montana, so I am familiar and I think a lot about, the, non-urban. I'm the city slicker in my family, right? Like, I moved
Oh,
to the
yeah.
cities and all that, but there are so many people who are working independently all over the state.
So let's pivot just a little bit more broadly. But working with Joan, working with NCID as you have and other significant organizations in the state, I really like to take this opportunity to pick your brain a little bit and share for the benefit of the listener. Like, first of all, what's your assessment of the entrepreneurial ecosystem? And that could be broadly in the state, but it could also be limited to the triangle. However, what is your take on our ecosystem?
Well, gosh, it's all the good people.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah, so we'll wrap right there.
And that's a wrap.
It is good people. I think that was just going to the summit last year. I mean, that was part of my motivation for being there. Many, many reasons to go, but
Speak of our
um,
tribe. I mean, that is our
it
tribe.
is. It is. So it's like, gosh, I need to go. I just want to be in this energy with other people who are finding ways to serve and build up the people of our state and who are exploring ways to do it differently, alternatively. It's like that's a whole lot of the appeal for me. Um, and it's being with all the tribe, being with the friends and all that. I have seen the definition of entrepreneurship and startup um, expand just tremendously since I have been in this market, and keeping in mind that when I made the my jump from music to Discover Durham to tourism. Then I jumped out of there. My first clients that time around were tech CEOs, tech startups, tech founders. This is like this new kind of energy that was happening. And I was, one of just a handful of independent PR folks. So it's like, okay, great. I'll help you launch your thing.
Well,
I'll
at
help
least
you
that
launch your
field
thing.
was littered with women. So you had
Yeah.
that, the,
Yeah.
the familiarity with so many people.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, and at that point, it was really, tech focused. That if you were talking about a startup, that was it. There was like a
Yeah.
very particular definition.
That was the basis for tech-based economic development, TBED, as a field of practice.
Since that time, I think, biotech startups, life science, those we've seen. That's kind of more of the part of the conversation that we have. Joan and I um, uh, worked on introducing biolabs to this market. That
Yeah.
was when we first came together, and around Launch Bio, we met through an introduction through somebody else in the market, the Casey Steinbacher, who was the led the Durham Chamber of Commerce at that point. And Joan and I got together, and she shared kind of the vision for Launch Bio, the mission statement, the logo, and that was kind of about it. But it was um, the goal there was to introduce this new model for biolabs, so shared working space, co-working for labs, so to tremendously reduce the investment that scientists need to just initially test their science and all that. And we had this great conversation, and at the end of it, I was like, "Wow, this sounds so cool, and I don't know anything about biotech." And she said, "You know about entrepreneurs, so let's do this." And it's like, "All right, sounds good." And, that was like that really opened my eyes and expanded my network too. Of like, all right, so whoa, there's all these guys. So I know the tech folks, I know the creative folks. They like to, be creative together. The tech folks, they like numbers, and the scientists, they're curious. They're big thinkers. They're absolutely so much fun to work with. So this other type of entrepreneur, and then at the same time, um, you see like ag, you see all these other kind of opportunities for people to be innovative and turn those innovations into companies. And you got the whole list of all the different um, uh, definitions and ways that could look, and
Yep.
that is what excites me the most.
Well, I think this is probably a good place or topic to wrap things up. And so again, you, because of your reputation, who you are, and your accomplishments and your credibility in the marketplace, I mean, you have access to halls I can't even get into. So if you had a parting message to people that have their hands on the controls of power, in the economy, the market, the ecosystem, like, what's your parting thought or suggestion?
Mm.
Whether it's like, these large foundational organizations that we all know, usually controlled by families that are well known with long histories in the state, or, access to elected officials. What would be your parting thought to them?
Collaboration, is easy to say, but harder to do. It really does, you know, take take time, a lot of listening. I like to talk as much as the next guy, but there is a time to listen, and that is when you are trying to figure out how to work together with people. In every room that I'm in, that comes up, and there's a desire to work with folks in some of the other sectors or other rooms that I'm in, and that's always, to me, as the super connector type, that's like the most exciting stuff to hear is like, okay, well, that's easy enough done, right? You can let's make that connection. Let's do that. But sometimes that desire, that ambition doesn't get past the boardroom, you know,
Why do you think that is?
because it's, relationship work is it's time intensive, and it doesn't immediately, you can't see it on a spreadsheet. You can't see that, all right, so these hours, or, however it is that, however a company evaluates that, it's a long play.
Yeah.
A long play happens to be one of my values, so I'm always,
Right.
happy to cast and think, down the line, but I'm also about bold action, and sometimes in those rooms, the bold action is just like, "All right, let's put together the list of who is it?" So we say we wanna work with, with biotech folks, or we wanna have stronger relationships in the park, or we want the arts to be a part of, our, business in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Moving to action on that is literally like, "Okay, who do we know? Who's not at the table right now?"
Boy, that's a big question to ask.
Yeah.
Who should be at this table that isn't?
Who isn't here right now?
Right.
And you might not know, and then to get this is an incredibly, accessible place. That is part of connection and being able to, reach out to people, and, um, that they will give you their time is just beautiful, and that's part of why I do business the way that I do, is because so many people have taken that time with me along the way. So it's never, I'm not of the belief that, uh, that it's not that, boy, those guys won't sit down with us, or these, it's like you haven't written the email, you haven't invited. Saying that everyone is welcome at my house, "You're welcome at my house anytime," is different than, "Tom, why don't you come over for dinner
I
on
agree.
Saturday," or whatever, you know? Like, you have to be intentional, about these things, and it's all possible, but you have to believe that those human relationships, that there is value, in those meetings and sitting down and getting to know people. This is the South too. I mean, this is relationships are important.
That they are.
Yeah.
And they have to be authentic in that case, and that's a theme that keeps coming through on these podcasts,
Mhm.
the authenticity and that willingness to build bridges and be inclusive and understand it. To me, it's enlightened self-interest to understand,
Mhm.
if you win, I win too.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game,
That's right.
right, between us.
That's right.
And when you can bring people together and with shared values and aligned on those shared values, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. And in these crazy times,
Mhm.
I'm going to stay apolitical, but in these crazy times, I mean, I think optimism is actually an act of courage
Mhm.
and needed more now
Mhm.
than ever,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And you are a vessel, a model for others to aspire to emulate, and I wanna thank you, dear friend.
Oh, thank you.
I've just been blessed to get to know you in my tenure here, and I hope we have many more years collaborating.
We better.
Way better. I love that. And that's the best way I can end this episode. So I hope you all enjoyed the conversation as much as I certainly did. That's one of the privileges of being the host. You just get to sit down with incredibly bright people. And as usual, if you have ideas or suggestions for guests or topics, please let us hear from you. All of our contact information can be found wherever you stream your podcasts. And with that, Margaret, thank you once again.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what's ahead for you and the
All of
people that
us.
yeah, all of us collectively. Um, you make the journey worth taking.
I appreciate that.